Imagine for a moment that you are standing before an ancient olive tree. Its trunk is thick with centuries of weather etched into the bark, and its roots extend invisibly, far beneath the soil, into hidden streams of water. This tree is not simply a plant, it is a living covenant. The scriptures speak of the olive as a symbol of enduring life, of covenant with God, of anointing and sacred purpose. When the psalmist declared, "I am like a green olive tree in the house of God," he was not describing horticulture. He was unveiling a spiritual principle, that your life, when rooted in the divine ground, draws upon an endless reservoir of strength and vitality. As Emmet once taught, the Bible is never just history. It is a coded book of inner law. Each tree, each river, each parable conceals a metaphysical law waiting to be applied. The olive tree, more than any other, reveals the law of abiding. It is not the surface branches that keep the tree alive in drought, nor the visible fruit that guarantees the next harvest. It is the hidden root system, sunk deep in unseen places, that allows the olive tree to flourish where others collapse. And so it is with your soul. Your root is the consciousness you choose to abide in. If you root yourself in worry, resentment, or pride, your life withers. But if you root yourself in the divine source, the Christ-conscious ground beneath all appearances, you will find unending strength. So, before we journey inward, I invite you to like and subscribe, but only if it truly resonates with your soul. The olive tree reminds you that life is not sustained by surface appearances. Leaves can shimmer in the wind, fruit can appear abundant, but without depth of root, it is an illusion. How often do you see lives that look successful on the surface, yet collapse at the first storm? That collapse is not because the storm was too great. It is because the roots were too shallow. The spiritual law is plain. Strength comes from where you are rooted, and where you are rooted is determined by what you abide in. Abiding is not an occasional visit to prayer, not a fleeting moment of inspiration. Abiding means dwelling, remaining, taking your life force daily from the source. Fox often said that you cannot take Sundays as your only meal and expect to be nourished through the week. In the same way, you cannot treat spiritual consciousness as a temporary refuge and expect enduring strength. The olive tree does not send its roots to sip only once a week. It lives every moment, drawing from the ground. That is the law. The deeper the root, the steadier the life. Think of your own life right now. Where are your roots? Are they shallow, tangled in the surface soil of circumstances, bank balances, opinions, shifting moods? Or do they sink into something deeper, something that cannot be touched by the changing winds? Every person is rooted in something, whether they recognize it or not. The olive tree makes the law clear. You will manifest whatever you are abiding in. If you live planted in fear, fear will seep into every branch. If you abide in divine peace, that peace will flow through every thought and act. This is why the olive became the great symbol of covenant in the Bible. After the flood, the dove brought back an olive branch, announcing that life was restored, that God's covenant endured. Covenant is simply another word for law unchanging, reliable, operating without favoritism. To abide in the olive root is to abide in the covenant of divine strength. It does not matter who you are, what background you carry, what failures haunt your past. The law is impersonal. Root yourself in the source, and the source will sustain you. But you cannot grasp this principle merely with intellect. It must be lived. Abiding is not an idea. It is a way of being. You abide when you choose calm trust over restless fear, gratitude over bitterness, silence over complaint. You abide when, instead of reacting to the surface storm, you sink inward to the root of your being and draw from there. This is why mystics through the ages, from prophets to metaphysicians, have insisted that the kingdom of God is within you. The roots are within, not without. You may say, "But I feel weak. My roots do not seem deep enough." Remember, even the oldest olive tree began as a small shoot. Roots deepen not in a day, but in continual practice. Every choice to return to the source, every moment you remind yourself that strength flows from within, sends your roots deeper. The soil is already fertile. The stream is already there. You are not asked to create the source, only to abide in it. Look again at that olive tree in your mind. Imagine how many seasons it has stood, through storms, droughts, wars, and harvests. The tree does not survive by resisting storms, but by being rooted beyond their reach. You can do the same. Your life does not have to break under pressure, because pressure is always surface. The root is beyond pressure. The root is spirit itself, and spirit cannot be broken. The covenant is this: abide in the root of divine life, and strength will be unending. This is not poetic exaggeration, it is metaphysical law. Just as surely as gravity holds planets in orbit, the law of abiding governs your inner world. What you root in, you manifest. Abide in divine source, and you will find yourself sustained through every season. So, let the olive tree speak to you now. It is whispering, sink your roots deep. Do not live in the shallows. Draw from the unseen ground. Live in the covenant of strength. If you take this seriously, if you begin even now to abide not in words, but in daily trust, you will discover that unending strength is not a promise for some far-off heaven. It is the law of your life, here and now. When you think of the olive tree, the image that arises is not only of roots clinging to hidden streams, but of branches extending outward, carrying sap into every leaf and fruit. In the scriptures, oil drawn from the olive became the substance of anointing, the symbol of consecration and illumination. But what is oil except the distilled essence of the root, refined and transformed into usable power? Spiritually understood, the oil is what flows from the hidden abiding of your soul. When you draw deeply from the divine source, what emerges is not just survival, but illumination. You begin to shine in ways that are unmistakable, not through human effort, but through the quiet overflow of inner alignment. The law behind this symbol is simple and direct. What you absorb at the root becomes the quality of your expression. Oil does not appear on the tree without the hidden process beneath the bark, just as peace, wisdom, or strength do not suddenly appear in your life without inner cultivation. When you remain rooted in the source, the very energy that sustains your being becomes visible in the form of calm presence, clear judgment, and a spirit that does not break under stress. This is why Emmet described spiritual law as exact. It is not a vague blessing granted or withheld. It is a principle operating as reliably as sunlight nourishing the earth. Consider the ancient use of oil in lamps. The lamp itself is only a vessel, the wick only a channel. Without oil, there is no light. And without abiding in the divine, your lamp is just an empty vessel, unable to illumine either your path or the lives of others. When your consciousness is supplied with the oil of inner alignment, light shines naturally. You do not force it, it flows. This is the reason so many traditions stress vigilance in maintaining your oil. It is a reminder that your strength and clarity are not stored in the outer world, but cultivated within. In practical terms, this means that your thoughts, feelings, and choices are never neutral. Each one either deepens your root in the source or depletes your reservoir of oil. A life of resentment and fear uses up oil without replenishing it, leaving you burnt out, hollow, and fragile. But a life that abides in gratitude, integrity, and quiet trust continually refills its lamp. It is a dynamic exchange. The more you return to the source, the more oil is distilled within you. The tree does not struggle to produce oil. It simply abides, and the oil emerges as a natural consequence. Likewise, when you stop struggling to generate strength from your own will and instead remain rooted in spirit, the oil of illumination flows effortlessly. Think of the times when you have faced great stress, yet somehow carried an inexplicable calm. That calm was the oil of your hidden abiding. It was not manufactured in the moment of crisis, but cultivated in the unseen habits of your mind beforehand. In the same way, the olive tree does not suddenly send roots deeper when the drought begins. The roots are already there, quietly drawing water day by day. Spiritual preparedness is not panic-driven but continuous. You live each day drawing oil so that when the night comes, your lamp is already filled. This understanding dissolves the illusion that you must chase strength or illumination from outside sources. Just as oil cannot be borrowed from another tree in the moment of need, you cannot depend on others to supply what only your own abiding can generate. Teachers, communities, and practices can inspire you, but the oil is yours to cultivate. You either live rooted in the source, or you live depleted by the surface. There is no substitute. And once you grasp this, you realize that abiding is not only about your survival, but about your capacity to serve others. A lamp filled with oil can light a room. A life filled with oil can steady the lives of many. The question, then, is not whether the oil exists, it always does, but whether you are connected to it. The law is impartial. Divine supply is infinite, but only those who open their roots to it receive the flow. When you close yourself through bitterness, fear, or neglect of inner life, the oil cannot rise. But when you remain open, receptive, and steady in your abiding, the oil flows of its own accord. Nothing can prevent it. Not circumstance, not opposition, not the passage of time. The oil of spirit has only one condition, that you remain rooted in the source. As you continue to picture the olive tree, imagine the slow, patient movement of sap becoming oil. It does not rush, it does not panic, it moves with the quiet confidence of law. Your own transformation is the same. You may not notice changes immediately, but as long as your roots are in the right soil, oil is being formed within you. Every moment you choose calm over agitation, forgiveness over revenge, gratitude over complaint, you are distilling oil. And one day, when you need it most, it will appear as resilience, clarity, or the courage to take the next step. The ancients used olive oil not only for lamps but for healing wounds. In the same way, your inner oil becomes a balm for both yourself and others. The strength you cultivate through abiding is not rigid or brittle. It is supple, able to bend and heal. It carries the fragrance of peace, the shine of clarity, the warmth of compassion. This is the true evidence of your roots. Not how loudly you speak of faith, not how much you display on the surface, but how much oil flows when life calls upon you to shine or to heal. You can see now that the metaphor of the olive is not random poetry but a precise spiritual code. The tree's roots, branches, and oil are laws of consciousness. The tree abides, and therefore it endures. The oil is produced, and therefore light and healing are possible. This is not superstition, it is spiritual science. And when you apply it, you discover that the oil of illumination is not only for special moments of worship, but for the ordinary hours of your life. In the conversations you hold, in the decisions you make, in the way you respond to setbacks, this is where the oil flows. To live like the olive tree is to live from covenant. It is to know that your life is not sustained by surface conditions, but by the steady stream of spirit within. The covenant does not promise exemption from storms, it promises unending supply in the midst of them. And when you realize this, your daily life takes on a new depth. You are no longer desperate for recognition or fearful of depletion. You know that as long as your roots remain in the source, oil will continue to rise, light will continue to shine, and strength will continue to be yours without end. When you hear of grafting branches into an olive tree, it is not simply a matter of horticulture, but a profound spiritual metaphor. The ancient image speaks of a wild branch cut and joined to a cultivated root, allowed to share the life and the strength that flows from a deeper source. The lesson is not about trees, but about consciousness. Your mind, with all its scattered habits and tangled emotions, can be grafted into the higher order of divine life. When you align thought with the source, The very flow of spirit takes hold of you, nourishing what once was wild and disconnected, giving it place, purpose, and fruitfulness. This is not about becoming something you are not. It is about remembering what you already are in potential. A branch on its own dries out quickly, no matter how green it once appeared. But once grafted into a living root, the same branch becomes vigorous again. In the same way, your thoughts, when separated from the source, exhaust themselves in worry, vanity, and endless pursuit of strength from outside. They become like branches cut off, full of surface life but no lasting power. Yet when thought is rejoined to spirit, it is not only revived but transformed. What once was restless becomes steady. What once bore no fruit begins to overflow with abundance. This metaphor teaches the inclusiveness of the divine law. No branch is too wild, too lost, too untamed to be grafted. The law does not reject, it transforms. The moment you direct your consciousness upward and inward, you are rejoined to the source. This is why metaphysical truth insists that no person is beyond redemption, not in a moralistic sense, but in the law of life. A branch may appear dry, but the root has power to renew it. And so it is with the mind. No thought is too weary, no memory too broken, no heart too scattered to be restored. The condition is simple. You must allow yourself to be joined again to the living root. The practical side of this teaching is vital. Grafting does not happen by accident. A cut is made, and the branch is deliberately bound into the host tree. In your life, the cut is the moment of surrender when you admit that surface living is not enough, and you choose to be rooted in something deeper. The binding is your daily practice, the meditation, the quiet thought, the refusal to let distraction pull you away. Just as the graft requires time to heal into unity, so does your mind require patience and persistence to become one with the source. It is not instant, but it is inevitable once you remain bound to the root. When Emmet spoke of Christ consciousness, he was pointing to this very union. To be grafted into the Christ mind is not to abandon your individuality, but to let it be fed by divine sap. You are still yourself, but now yourself is alive with a greater life. You think with more clarity, act with more wisdom, endure with more strength, because the life flowing in you is not limited to your small reserves. It is the endless supply of spirit. And this supply does not diminish. The more you draw, the more it flows, just as a root does not weaken by feeding its branches, but becomes all the more vital. This reveals the great law of inclusion. When you are grafted into the source, you do not take away life from others, but add to the whole. The same sap that flows in you flows in every branch. There is no competition, no scarcity. What nourishes one does not deprive another. This truth frees you from rivalry, from the fear that another's growth diminishes your own. In the tree of life, all are sustained equally by the same root. And once you know this, you no longer waste energy comparing, envying, or striving against others. Instead, you settle into the quiet strength of your own branch, bearing your own fruit, confident that the sap is more than enough. You may wonder how to know if you are truly grafted into the source. The answer is not found in appearances, but in the quality of your inner flow. Are you nourished by peace, or are you drained by agitation? Are you producing fruit that blesses others, or are you caught in barrenness? The evidence lies not in what you claim, but in what you express. A grafted branch cannot help but bear fruit because the sap insists on expressing itself. Likewise, a consciousness truly rooted in the divine cannot help but radiate strength, wisdom, and kindness. You may not always notice it, but others will. They will sense the oil in your lamp, the fruit on your branch, the steadiness in your spirit. This understanding removes all pride and all despair. You do not boast, because the fruit is not yours alone, it is the life of the root flowing through you. You do not despair, because no matter how withered you feel, the root can still renew you. The law is impartial and unfailing. Your task is simply to remain joined. The branch cannot feed itself. It must draw from the root. And the moment you remember this, you cease trying to live from surface effort and begin to abide in the deeper flow. The image of grafting also reminds you that unity is not uniformity. Each branch maintains its unique place and expression, yet all are sustained by one life. In the same way, your individuality is not erased by abiding in Christ consciousness but fulfilled. You are most yourself when you are most united with the Source. Cut off, you wither into imitation and struggle. Joined, you flourish into authenticity and strength. This is the paradox of spiritual law. The more you surrender to unity, the more your true self emerges. So as you continue to imagine the olive tree, see not only the roots and oil but the many branches, wild and cultivated, grafted together into one living whole. Let this image remind you that the Source does not exclude, but always includes. It does not weaken by sharing, but strengthens all. And when you accept your place in this unity, you will know what it means to live with unending strength, for the life you draw upon is not fragile or fleeting, but eternal and inexhaustible. When the Scriptures describe the olive as evergreen, it is not just a remark about its leaves. Evergreen signifies constancy, a life untouched by passing seasons. Where other trees shed and grow weary, the olive stands with steady foliage, a quiet witness that some forms of life are not bound by cycles of loss and return. And when you read this with metaphysical eyes, you begin to see that evergreen is not a botanical condition, but a state of consciousness. It is the mind that does not wither under pressure, the spirit that does not lose its glow when outer circumstances shift. To be evergreen is to live rooted in a reality beyond the seasons of the world. You know what it feels like to live by seasons. One day your confidence blooms, another day it drops, as though frost had come overnight. Your joy rises when things go well and withers when they falter. That is the rhythm of surface living, and while it seems natural, it is also exhausting. To live evergreen means stepping out of that fragile rhythm and into a steadier one, the rhythm of spirit. This does not mean you never feel change, but that the essence of you does not collapse when change arrives. Your leaves remain, because your life is not tied to circumstance but to Source. Consider how the olive tree is prized not only for its leaves, but for its endurance in harsh soil. It thrives where others fail, rooting deep, reaching water that lies hidden. In this, too, the symbol speaks. Your strength is not in shallow soil, but in depths others overlook. If you allow yourself to root into spirit, you will find nourishment where the world sees only barrenness. You may stand in dry seasons, yet within you is a reservoir that cannot be seen with outer eyes. To live evergreen is to know that your supply is invisible but unfailing. This is why metaphysical teaching insists that true life is inward first. When you try to live by appearances, you find yourself tossed by every weather. Praise lifts you up, criticism cuts you down. Gain makes you sing, loss makes you despair. It is a fragile way of living, as fragile as leaves that come and go with the seasons. But once you anchor in the evergreen truth that your real life is rooted in the divine Source, you discover a quietness that persists no matter what storms pass overhead. It is not indifference, it is endurance. It is not denial, it is depth. Evergreen consciousness also changes how you see others. Instead of judging them by their current season, you recognize the hidden life within. A friend may seem barren, caught in winter, but you remember that the root of spirit in them is still alive. An enemy may seem fierce, burning like summer heat, but you know that beneath it lies the same unchanging Source. This awareness softens your heart and grants patience, for you no longer expect perfection from the surface, but trust the unseen root. In this way, you participate in the same law that sustains the olive tree. You trust the life within, not just the weather without. The evergreen symbol also reveals that vitality is not something you acquire and then lose, but something that abides when you are aligned. The source does not withhold its flow. It is continuous, steady, impartial. What changes is your connection, not the supply. And this realization saves you from despair when you feel weak. Weakness is not proof of absence, but of disconnection. The sap has not dried up. You have simply ceased to draw. And the moment you return, the moment you abide again in the awareness of Christ consciousness, strength begins to flow. Think of times in your life when you felt suddenly renewed after long weariness. Perhaps you sat in silence for a moment, or read a line that pierced the fog, or remembered to breathe deeply and let go. Those moments are not accidents. They are glimpses of evergreen life. They show you that the sap is always there, waiting. What feels like sudden renewal is simply the removal of obstruction. The truth is that your strength never left you. You had only forgotten your root. This is the hope offered by the evergreen olive. You do not need to fear the seasons. They will come and go, but you are not their slave. You are rooted in a deeper soil, drawing from an eternal flow. And when you trust this, you no longer panic in winter, nor do you cling desperately in summer. You rest in the assurance that your life is steady, continuous, evergreen. In practical terms, this means cultivating practices that remind you of the source daily. Gratitude, meditation, silent acknowledgement of spirit, these are not rituals for special days, but nourishment for every day. Just as the olive tree keeps its leaves always, you keep your mind always aware of the life within. You do not wait for crisis to seek the source. You abide there continually. And the more you do, the more natural it becomes, until evergreen consciousness feels as normal as breathing. So when you think of the olive tree's leaves, do not see only greenery, but a message written in nature's language. Life can be steady. Strength can be constant. Peace can be unbroken. To live this way is not fantasy. It is the natural state of the soul when it abides in the divine source. And once you realize this, you are no longer content to live by seasons. You choose evergreen life, and in that choice, you discover the secret of unending strength. Branches do not invent fruit, they conduct it. What appears on the limb is simply the story of what the roots have been drinking. That is why an olive tree can stand in lean country and still carry weighty clusters, because its life is not the hill's generosity, but the aquifer beneath it. Read that inwardly, and the law becomes unmistakable. Your outward behavior and results are the fruit of the root you choose to live from. When consciousness abides in shallow soil, fear, resentment, vanity, the branch works hard and yields little. When consciousness abides in the divine ground, the same branch quiets down and begins to carry sweetness without theatrics. You already know this law in your bones. Consider the times you tried to force a better outcome by tightening your jaw and commanding your mood. The branch trembled, but nothing ripened. Then there were days you moved from a settled center and discovered that conversation softened, work flowed, decisions clarified. The change was not magic, it was root selection. Spirit fed the interior, and the exterior followed. Saying it plainly helps. Outcomes echo origins. If you want different fruit, change the well you draw from. The fruit test is useful because it is honest. You can talk eloquently about peace while living rooted in worry. Your speech will be polished, and your presence brittle. You can profess compassion while rooted in the need to be seen. Your giving will be loud, and your aftertaste sour. The tree never lies. By their fruits, you know them, is not a threat, but a diagnostic. You don't need to guess which soil is feeding you. Your day tells you. Irritability, chronic fatigue, compulsive comparison, these are not random moods, but fruit from a root that has been drinking sand. Steadiness, clean energy, durable kindness, these are not personality quirks, but fruit from a root drinking living water. Look closely at the texture of fruit that grows from different atmospheres of mind. Fear-fed fruit looks glossy and empty. A quick yes that turns into avoidance. a bold plan that collapses at the first headwind, a compliment that asks for repayment later. Pride-fed fruit looks large and tastes dry. Impressive schedules, immaculate images, very little nourishment. Resentment-fed fruit looks tough, lasts a long time on the branch, feeds no one. By contrast, fruit that forms while you abide in the divine has a quiet density. It travels well. It satisfies without fanfare. It can be handed to a stranger and still taste like home. Because fruit takes time, the law also asks for patience. You can change your root choice today. You cannot harvest a year's worth of sweetness by nightfall. This is not punishment. It is mercy. Ripening protects you from the violence of premature judgments. If you evaluate your life every afternoon, you will keep uprooting yourself before the sap can climb. The olive teaches duration. It moves slowly on purpose so that what it offers will last. Inside you, the same pacing applies. Hold your alignment long enough for the branch to catch up. Do today's abiding and let the calendar disclose its proof. This patience does not mean passivity. Healthy trees receive care. If a branch is shadowing the fruit, you adjust its angle. If insects threaten the crop, you respond. Inwardly, this looks like guarding the atmospheres that feed your root. You limit the inputs that deplete you. You decline conversations that scandalize your peace. You practice truthfulness so your sap doesn't have to detour around pretense. None of this is theatrical. It is agricultural. You are training your inner climate to favor ripening. You will notice, too, that some growth masquerades as fruit. Gardeners call them suckers, vigorous shoots that steal life from the limb while promising abundance later. In consciousness, a sucker is any activity that consumes attention without increasing love, clarity, or courage. Endless scrolling, grievance monologues, performance, spirituality, lush foliage, no nourishment. You do not need to hate these shoots. You need to recognize them and redirect the sap. When energy returns to the main bough, your real calling, your actual responsibilities, your simple daily faithfulness fruit resumes. Because fruit is meant for others, this law rescues you from a lonely spirituality. The olive does not eat its own harvest. The branch is satisfied by feeding the village. Inwardly, abiding makes generosity sane. You stop forcing dramatic gestures and start offering what is seasonally true, a calm voice in a fraught meeting, a clean decision when ambiguity has been weaponized, a quiet repair after a careless word. Those are olives. They roll across tables and keep households running. They become oil, but even before pressing, they nourish. Let the workplace be a grove to test this. If your root is approval, you'll say yes beyond capacity and then resent the people you pleased. If your root is control, you'll overspecify, strangle initiative, and call the desiccation excellence. If your root is source, you will do the next right thing at the right scale, tell the clean truth, and leave room for others to succeed. Fruit, projects that finish, meetings that end with direction, teams that remain human under pressure. The flavor lingers after you leave the room. Let conflict be another grove. Rooted in vanity, you must win. Rooted in fear, you must hide. Rooted in source, you aim to repair what truth permits and release what it does not. Your tone lowers, your sentences shorten, your boundaries hold without spikes. Fruit, dignity preserved on both sides, even when agreement is not possible. Your opponent does not have to admire you. The branch is satisfied if no one bleeds. Let solitude be a third grove. When rooted in restlessness, you pack silence with distractions and call it downtime. When rooted in guilt, you refuse rest because you haven't earned it. When rooted in source, you observe Sabbath because life inside you deserves to breathe. Fruit, restoration that doesn't drift into numbness, clarity that returns without fanfare, a soul that meets Monday with something to give. If you want a practical way to cooperate with this law, adopt a small ritual of origin before tasks that matter. It can be brief. Sit, soften the jaw. Feel the weight of your ribs. Say inwardly, I choose the deep root. This is not a mantra to hypnotize, it is a consent form. You are granting spirit permission to feed the branch without interference. Repeat as needed. In time, the body will learn the feeling of good sap and ask for it without words. Discernment also sharpens when you pay attention to the after what remains in you once an act is finished. Fruit from shallow roots leaves residue, the need to explain, a background hum of self-doubt, a minor shame you have to drown with noise. Fruit from source leaves ground that feels washed. You may feel tender, but you are not contaminated. You may be tired, but you are not emptied. The day can close without you needing to rewrite it. This after scan is not self-criticism, it is harvest inspection. It helps you keep choosing the well that actually feeds you. None of this removes weather. Heat comes, and you sag. Wind comes, and you creak. Yet even in stress, a rooted branch does not panic about its identity. It does not mistake temporary strain for permanent truth. Pressure becomes part of the sweetening. There is a reason olives are often cured before they are served. Some fruits reveal their best flavor after a faithful process. Your life will undergo such curing long conversations with time, salt enough to preserve what matters, a gentle press that separates bitterness from oil. The tree is not alarmed. It understands outcome and origin are joined. As this clarity settles, your goals themselves simplify. Instead of chasing a catalog of results, you learn to prize one thing: staying fed by the right life. You measure success less by applause and more by the integrity of the harvest. Were people nourished? Did truth move? Did peace remain touchable? From that single aim, many good results follow on their own. The branch becomes what it was made to be, a conduit, not a factory. And because it carries rather than manufactures, it can keep carrying for a very long time. In ancient language, the olive was not only fruit, but fire. When pressed, it yielded oil that lit lamps through the night. The psalmist called it the house of oil, a phrase that invites you to see your own consciousness as a reservoir. Stored within you is not simply potential for survival, but material for illumination. Every thought that abides in harmony with the divine source contributes a drop to this inner storehouse. Every honest choice, every merciful response, every moment of stillness adds to the jar. In time, the reservoir swells, and when darkness presses in, you find you have light to give. This imagery insists on practice. You cannot expect brightness from an empty lamp. A week of distraction, a season of bitterness, and you may discover that when night falls, you scramble for matches. Yet if you have steadily collected oil through simple, daily agreements with truth, the lamp is ready. This is the difference between performative spirituality and lived abiding. The former expects dramatic interventions when the crisis comes. The latter quietly invests so that crisis finds you equipped. Oil also speaks of concentration. Grapes yield wine with little pressure, but olives resist. They require crushing to release their essence. Inwardly, this means that the most luminous qualities often appear underweight. Patience is tested, courage is verified, compassion is purified. When you are pressed by circumstance, the mind may panic, but the deeper root knows something precious is being expressed. Do not mistake pressure for punishment. In the law of abiding, it is often the final stage before brilliance. The oil of illumination emerges when the branch consents to be used beyond its comfort. Think of your own seasons of compression. You face deadlines stacked beyond reason, yet in the furnace of that demand, clarity sharpened. You walked through heartbreak, and in the slow press of grief, tenderness surfaced that lectures could never have produced. You endured misunderstanding, and while the ego fumed, a quieter strength grew the capacity to stand unrecognized without collapse. These are olives being crushed, oil flowing. The light that results is not theoretical, it is lived power. People notice without you having to explain. This principle saves you from resenting the press. It also rescues you from romanticizing it. The oil is not the pain. The oil is the essence that pain accidentally released. Do not worship suffering. Worship the source that can turn it into brightness. Some imagine holiness as a grim endurance, as though God delights in watching you break. But illumination is not sadism, it is alchemy. The very things that threaten to extinguish you become material for light when surrendered into abiding consciousness. The lamp imagery also reminds you of responsibility. Oil is not meant for storage alone. Hoarding your reservoir breeds stagnation. Lamps are designed to burn. Inwardly, this means your strength, clarity, and peace must find expression. They are not ornaments, but provisions. A word spoken calmly in panic is oil. A refusal to retaliate when insulted is oil. A generous correction instead of shaming is oil. You are not called to dramatize these actions. You are simply called to keep the flame supplied. Others may never thank you, but rooms stay lit. That is testimony enough. Consider how this law unfolds in daily work. When rooted in ego, you drain yourself, proving worth. The lamp sputters, smoke irritates, and you collapse. When rooted in source, you remember that the oil is not self-generated. It flows through you. You still labor, but you do not deplete. You give without hollowing because the root keeps replenishing. This is not theory. It is the only reason endurance feels possible. Without this law, burnout is inevitable. With it, even demanding seasons produce more clarity than fatigue. The oil also perfumes. In the ancient world, it was used not only for light but for anointing, a fragrant sign of consecration. In consciousness, this means your stored essence affects atmosphere. You walk into rooms and people feel steadier, not because you recite doctrine, but because your presence carries a subtle fragrance. This is not manipulation, it is inevitability. Atmosphere reveals root. If you have been dwelling in harmony, oil scents the air. If you have been dwelling in conflict, smoke does. The nose never lies. This awareness leads to careful stewardship. You begin to notice what drains your jar: resentful rehearsals, vanity projects, gossip disguised as concern. These are leaks in the reservoir. You patch them by refusing to indulge. You redirect energy toward silence, clean action, genuine service. Each refusal saves a drop. Each alignment adds a drop. Over months and years, the jar stays full, and lamps burn without panic. Do not imagine that your oil must be spectacular. The smallest flame is enough to ruin absolute darkness. A single olive yields only a little oil, yet combined with others, lamps can blaze through entire nights. So too with you. A brief act of patience in traffic, a soft word to a tense child, a silent prayer for a colleague, these may look minor, but they accumulate into reservoirs that keep communities alive. Never despise small oil. And when you falter, and you will do not despair, the reservoir can be replenished. Return to the source. Consent again to abide. Each day you can resume storing drops. The lamp does not shame you for going out. It simply waits for fresh oil. Grace is not an excuse to waste. It is an invitation to begin again. Over time, the cycle of depletion and refill itself trains you. You learn what leaks, what fills, and how to keep flames steady. As the image of oil settles into you, a deeper trust grows. You no longer beg for strength at every crisis. You know the oil is there. You no longer fear the dark. You know the lamp is ready. You no longer resent the press. You know illumination is the fruit. This quiet confidence is itself the fragrance of abiding. It is the scent of a life that has discovered where its roots belong, where its sap flows, and where its oil is stored. And with that assurance, you can move into the storms and silences of existence, carrying a flame that does not die. When you hear the word pruning, you may think of loss, branches cut, leaves fallen, shape altered. Yet in the life of the olive tree, pruning is never about destruction. It is always about direction. Left entirely wild, the tree spreads unevenly, wasting energy on shoots that never bear fruit. A skilled hand trims not to wound but to focus, ensuring that sap is not squandered on excess but channeled into growth that matters. Spiritually, pruning is the law of subtraction that serves multiplication. Certain attachments, habits, and even ambitions must be cut away so that your inner strength can nourish what is truly vital. The universal law does not bless clutter. It blesses clarity. You may resist at first, interpreting every removal as tragedy, but time reveals the wisdom. Less branch, more fruit. Pruning feels like reduction, but in metaphysical vision, it is refinement. Think of your own experience. There were times when relationships dissolved, jobs ended, plans collapsed. At first it felt cruel, like the gardener had slashed through your hopes. But later you saw, that path would have drained you, that tie would have strangled you, that plan would have distracted you. What looked like loss was the redirection of sap. Without pruning, the olive cannot bear abundance. Without pruning, you cannot either. The practice, then, is not to beg that nothing be cut, but to trust the process of shaping. When Spirit trims a branch from your life, it is not erasing you but aligning you. Energy that once flowed into resentment can now flow into creativity. Hours once lost in comparison can now be invested in gratitude. Dreams that were shallow can fall, making space for visions that endure. In this way, pruning is not the enemy of freedom, but the condition for it. Notice also that pruning is seasonal. A tree is not hacked constantly. There are rhythms, moments when cutting is necessary, and moments when growth is allowed. Spirit works with the same wisdom. You are not under perpetual correction. There are seasons where life lets you expand freely, only later to refine. When you understand this rhythm, you no longer panic at trimming. You recognize the season for what it is, a preparation for new fruit. Metaphysically, pruning represents the law of mental discipline. Thoughts unchecked will grow wild, producing branches of anxiety, fantasy, resentment. They look lively, but they drain your vitality. Discipline is the shears. When you refuse to dwell on bitterness, you are cutting. When you decline to rehearse failure, you are cutting. When you redirect your imagination from fear to possibility, you are cutting. Each act of discipline channels energy back to the root, where it can rise into stronger expressions. You may resist this inner work because cutting is uncomfortable. The mind feels deprived when you refuse its indulgences. Yet soon you discover a paradox. Less distraction, more peace. Fewer branches, more fruit. You do not become smaller, you become truer. This is the real revelation of pruning. Identity is not in the excess, but in the essence. You are not your scattered shoots. You are the life flowing through the root. The olive tree pruned well can stand for centuries, each cycle strengthening its trunk, each cut sharpening its purpose. In the same way, a consciousness willing to be refined by spirit acquires durability. You cease to fear the hand of discipline because you recognize its aim. And once you trust that aim, you even welcome it. You stop clinging to dead wood. You let it fall, knowing the energy it consumed is now free for better use. In practical life, this may mean surrendering a role that once defined you, allowing a friendship to shift, releasing possessions that no longer serve, or cutting off patterns of thought that sabotage. These choices may sting, but only briefly. Soon after, you breathe easier, your sap flowing without obstruction. You find that strength increases, clarity sharpens, joy deepens. What you feared to lose was never feeding you anyway. This law also humbles your judgment of others. You may see someone being cut back in life and mistake it for punishment, but you remember the olive tree. The shears are not vindictive, they are corrective. That friend whose business closed may soon bear fruit in a field far richer. That colleague who faced public setback may emerge with integrity purified. That family member who seemed diminished may soon reveal depth of character you never imagined. When you see pruning, resist despair. Trust the process. In the larger vision, pruning is not a violation but an act of love. It is the refusal to let you waste yourself on branches that look impressive but remain barren. It is the insistence that your life produce what matters: fruit, light, oil. And when you align with this law, you begin to prune yourself. You simplify schedules, cut out noise, trim away the unnecessary. Far from feeling deprived, you feel liberated, as though weight has fallen. You discover that freedom is not in adding, but in focusing. So, the next time you sense spirit cutting into your plans, do not flinch. Remember the olive. Pruning is not the end of growth. It is the condition for growth that lasts. And if you consent to this rhythm, you will find your life bearing fruit not by accident, but by design, shaped not by chaos, but by an unseen gardener who understands exactly what branches belong and what branches must go. Oil has always been the hidden treasure of the olive tree, the substance that makes it sacred across cultures and ages. The ancients crushed the fruit not only for food but for light, for healing, for anointing kings and priests. Within the rough skin of the olive is concealed a golden liquid that changes everything it touches. When you see this through spiritual vision, oil becomes more than product. It becomes symbol. It points to the secret within you, an essence not visible on the surface, but released through pressure and process, and once revealed, capable of illuminating and healing your world. This oil is the consciousness that arises when you abide in the source. It is not simply positive thinking, not shallow optimism, but a depth of awareness that carries radiance. When you draw on it, your mind produces clarity that lights the way forward even in darkness. Your heart produces warmth that soothes the pain of those around you. Your spirit produces fragrance that lingers, reminding others of what is possible. The oil is not imported, it is inherent. The only question is whether you are willing to allow the press that reveals it. Consider how oil is produced: crushing, pressing, refining. To the untrained eye, this looks like violence against the fruit. Yet without it, the potential remains locked, the treasure never discovered. So too in your life, moments of pressure and weight are not punishments, but presses. They squeeze out of you qualities that ordinary ease would never reveal: patience, compassion, creativity, resilience. What seems like breaking is in fact releasing. Your oil is your gift, and it flows most richly when life presses you. Oil has also always been a source of illumination. Lamps in ancient times depended on olive oil to burn, turning dark spaces into places of vision. Your own mind, when steeped in abiding awareness, becomes a lamp in the same way. Left alone, thoughts are scattered sparks, bright for a second and then gone. But when soaked in the oil of conscious connection, they burn steadily, bringing clarity to confusion. This is why time in silence, time in prayer, time in gratitude matters. It is the replenishing of oil in your lamp, the assurance that when night comes, your light will not fail. And notice how light born from oil naturally extends outward. A lamp filled with oil cannot keep its radiance to itself. It spills illumination into its environment. In the same way, when you abide in the source and let your oil flow, others are touched. They may not understand the origin of your peace, but they feel it. They may not know the name of your strength, but they benefit from it. You do not need to preach or persuade. Simply burning steadily is enough. Your oil makes you a living witness of what connection to the divine can do. Think of the people in your life who radiated calm when everything else was chaos. They may not have spoken loudly, but their presence steadied you. That was oil. Or recall someone whose kindness carried fragrance, who left you better than they found you, even in small interactions. That too was oil. These lives show you that oil is not reserved for mystics or saints. It is the natural outcome of abiding. You have the same reservoir within, waiting to be drawn upon, waiting to be released. Oil is also healing. Ancient medicine used it to soothe wounds, soften skin, strengthen the body. Spiritually, the oil of your consciousness can soothe wounds of resentment, soften hearts hardened by fear, and strengthen your own soul where it has grown weary. When you abide in the divine source, you do not need to force healing. It flows naturally, like oil seeping into cracks, filling what was broken with gentle restoration. This is not sentimentality, it is a law. The mind aligned with the source cannot help but radiate healing, just as a lamp cannot help but radiate light. In practical terms, cultivating oil means making room for depth. You cannot rush it, cannot manufacture it by surface effort. You must be willing to sit in silence, to let thoughts settle, to surrender control. These moments act like presses, not always comfortable, but necessary. Over time, you discover that the oil flows more easily, requiring less struggle because your inner channels are clear. And as it flows, your life becomes less about striving and more about radiating. Others sense it, not because you boast, but because your presence carries fragrance. You may be tempted to guard your oil, to hoard it, fearing it will run out. But this is a misunderstanding of the law. The reservoir is infinite, not because you are infinite, but because the source is. The more you pour out, the more is pressed forth. The more you give, the more flows. Hoarding leads to stagnation. Sharing leads to abundance. The olive tree is generous by nature, and so is the Spirit flowing through you. Trust this law, and your oil will never fail. So when you think of oil, do not reduce it to a substance in a jar. See it as the symbol of your inner radiance, your healing presence, your steady light. Remember that it comes not by accident, but by abiding, by pressing, by releasing. And remember that once it flows, it does not only bless you, it blesses all who come near. The olive tree teaches you that within what seems ordinary fruit lies extraordinary treasure. In the same way, within you lies oil waiting to flow, oil that can illuminate darkness, soothe pain, and bear witness that life connected to the source is never barren, never broken, but always abundant. Hidden beneath the soil, where no eye can see, the olive tree performs its most essential work. Its roots spread quietly, threading into the earth, drinking water, storing nutrients, anchoring the trunk against storms. Above ground, what you notice are branches, leaves, and fruit. Yet without the unseen roots, there would be no harvest, no shade, no strength. This is a law written into nature. The invisible sustains the visible, and in your life, it is the same. What is hidden within you, your inner connection to the divine source, is what sustains everything that can be seen. Too often, you are tempted to judge life by surface evidence. You measure progress by what others can notice, by what shows up quickly. But like the olive tree, your deepest growth is underground. It happens when you turn inward in stillness, when you realign your thinking, when you learn to abide in the quiet presence of Spirit. On the surface, little may appear to change. Yet beneath, strength is accumulating, anchoring you, preparing you to withstand whatever weather life sends. This hidden growth is not glamorous. It does not make headlines, does not feed the ego, but it is decisive. A tree without roots may look alive for a season, but the first drought reveals the truth. In the same way, a person who invests only in appearances, status, possessions, shallow approval may seem successful for a moment, but without inner rootedness, collapse comes quickly. Real strength is invisible before it is visible. Real endurance begins in the hidden place. The beauty of hidden growth is that it is steady and faithful. Roots do not rush. They extend quietly, steadily, persistently. Your mind, when centered on the divine, grows in the same way. Each moment you choose peace over panic, gratitude over complaint, forgiveness over bitterness. You extend roots. Each time you trust that the source sustains you, even when circumstances seem barren, you are pushing deeper into the soil of spirit. These moments may feel small, but together they form the system that holds you firm. When you look at someone who carries unshakable calm, who can endure storms without losing balance, you are seeing the fruit of hidden growth. They did not arrive at that strength by accident. They built it in the unseen choices, in the daily alignment with divine presence, in the steady refusal to disconnect from their source. Their visible life is simply the overflow of what their roots have been doing all along. You too are capable of such growth, if you honor the hidden work as much as the visible outcomes. Do not despise the hidden seasons. There will be times when your life feels quiet, when little seems to be happening, when others do not notice your progress. Trust that beneath the surface, something essential is forming. You are sending roots deeper, finding water others cannot see, building resilience others cannot measure. This is how the olive tree thrives even in arid lands. Its roots tap sources that lie beyond the surface. And this is how you thrive in difficulty, by abiding in the divine source, drinking from an endless supply. Hidden growth also protects you from being uprooted by sudden winds. Life will bring storms. This is unavoidable. But storms do not decide your fate. Roots do. If you have invested in the hidden work, you will bend but not break. You will be shaken but not destroyed. The storm will pass, and you will still be standing. This is not wishful thinking. It is the way the law of life operates. What is rooted in the source cannot be permanently overthrown. There is also a mystery in hidden growth. It cannot be controlled by the surface mind. You cannot dictate how roots extend, only create conditions that allow them. The same is true for your inner life. You cannot force spiritual growth through sheer will, but you can create conditions, silence, trust, gratitude, reflection that allow your consciousness to deepen naturally. Then, without fanfare, your roots strengthen, and in time, the evidence will show. This should give you hope when you feel unnoticed or overlooked. Remember, the olive tree's greatest work is unseen. The deeper your roots, the stronger your future. Every hidden moment of alignment, every quiet act of faith, every silent choice of love is part of that invisible system preparing you for what is ahead. One day, the fruit will be visible. One day, others will see the abundance. But long before that, the roots are already securing your destiny. The lesson of hidden growth is simple. Invest in the invisible. Trust the process beneath the surface. Abide in the source daily, even when nothing seems to change. Because the hidden always becomes the visible in time, the roots you cultivate in silence will one day explain the strength you display in storms. The oil you produce in pressing will one day become the light others see. And the quiet union with the divine source you choose now will one day be revealed as the unending strength that carried you all along. Every olive tree that endures and flourishes carries another secret, the necessity of pruning. To the casual eye, pruning looks destructive. Branches that appeared strong are cut away, limbs that bore leaves are trimmed, growth that seemed promising is removed. Yet any gardener knows that pruning is not punishment, it is preservation. Without it, branches grow wild, fruit becomes sparse, energy is wasted, and the tree weakens. What seems like loss is actually strategy. By cutting away what drains vitality, the tree is directed toward greater abundance. In your own life, pruning is just as essential. There are patterns of thought, habits, and attachments that may look alive but no longer serve you. They consume energy without producing fruit, draining your vitality, keeping you from deeper alignment with the source. At times, you will sense that something is being taken away not as cruelty, but as pruning. It may be a relationship that no longer nourishes you, a pursuit that distracts you from your higher purpose, or a mindset that once carried you but now limits you. These are branches that must go so the true life can flow into healthier directions. Pruning teaches you to let go. It is not easy to release what once felt important, what once seemed to define you. But if you cling to every branch, you risk stagnation. The olive tree knows this instinctively. Its health depends on shedding excess, making space for new growth. You too must accept that the path of abiding is not only about receiving, but about releasing. Strength is not found in accumulation, but in alignment. When pruning comes, your first response may be resistance. You feel diminished, as though something vital is lost. Yet over time, you begin to notice that energy flows more freely, that fruit appears in places it never did before, that your inner life feels lighter, clearer, more focused. What felt like reduction proves to be multiplication. This is how the law of pruning works. By subtracting, it multiplies. By cutting, it heals. By releasing, it renews. Think of how much of your energy is consumed by unnecessary growth. Resentments you water with repeated thought, fears you feed with constant attention, comparisons that choke your peace. These are branches without fruit. They do not nourish you, and yet they demand resources. Pruning them is liberation. To refuse is to weaken yourself, to remain entangled in what does not serve your soul. But when you allow them to be cut, you free your energy for what truly matters: peace, joy, love, creation, service. The olive tree, after pruning, does not complain. It stands still, trusting the process, allowing new shoots to form where old branches once were. You are invited to do the same. When something falls away, instead of grasping in fear, you can trust that space has been created for something better. When an old identity dies, you can believe that a truer self is emerging. When you release a toxic pattern, you can know that vitality is being redirected toward life-giving growth. Pruning is also seasonal. Just as trees are not cut back constantly, you are not under perpetual reduction. Seasons of pruning come with purpose, and then growth resumes. If you find yourself in such a season, take heart. It will not last forever. It is a stage in the cycle, a preparation for greater fruitfulness. Trust the rhythm, and you will discover that pruning is not an end, but a passage. On the deepest level, pruning reminds you that not everything that grows in your life belongs in your life. Growth itself is not the ultimate goal. Fruitful growth is. Energy must be channeled, directed, focused. And the spirit within you knows this. When you surrender to its guidance, when you abide in the source, you will be shown what must go. The cut may sting, but the purpose is love. So do not fear pruning. Recognize it as a law woven into both nature and soul. Embrace it as a sign that you are being prepared for something greater. Trust that what is removed is not your strength but your distraction, not your life but your limitation. Let the shears of spirit shape you as surely as the gardener shapes the olive tree. And remember, the tree pruned in one season becomes the tree heavy with fruit in the next. Your willingness to release is the doorway to your abundance. One of the greatest mysteries of the olive tree lies in its fruit, the pressing that produces oil. On the surface, the olive appears small, bitter, unimpressive. It cannot be eaten without preparation. But within that fruit, when crushed, lies the essence that lights lamps, heals wounds, nourishes the body, and anoints the sacred. Oil is only revealed when the fruit is pressed. Without pressure, its hidden potential remains locked inside. So it is with you. The most profound gifts of your soul are often brought forth under pressure. Challenges that seem to break you open are, in truth, pressing out the essence of what lies within. Struggles you resist may be the very conditions that draw forth light, healing, and nourishment for yourself and others. The pressing is not punishment, it is revelation. It unveils what you already carry but do not yet express. In moments of trial, you may long for escape, imagining that, if only the pressure were lifted, peace would return. Yet in reality, Peace comes when you understand the law at work. The pressing is not the end of you, it is the beginning of something new in you. Just as the olive must release its oil, so your spirit must release its inner strength. The weight you carry becomes the channel through which your light shines. Notice how this mirrors the law of abiding. The tree rooted in the source can withstand the pressing of life because it knows the oil within will not be wasted. Every hardship becomes a vessel of transformation. The pressing that seems unbearable becomes the very condition that reveals the hidden light. And as oil once fueled lamps, so your essence fuels the illumination of others. When you look back on your life, you will see that the times of deepest pressure often coincide with the times of greatest growth. You did not know your resilience until you were tested. You did not know your courage until you were pressed. You did not know your capacity for love until you were called to forgive in the midst of pain. The pressing does not destroy, it defines. It clarifies who you are and what you carry. But understand this: pressing is not constant. Just as olives are harvested in their season, the pressing comes at appointed times. It is not perpetual suffering, but purposeful transformation. Between these seasons, you are given rest, growth, renewal. You are not designed to live in constant crushing. You are designed to produce fruit, and when the time is right, that fruit yields oil. The law embedded in this process reminds you that nothing in your life is wasted. Even the struggles that seem senseless hold meaning when viewed through the lens of abiding in the source. The pressing is part of the cycle of creation, turning bitterness into healing, potential into reality, darkness into light. And when you accept this, you move from resistance to trust, from fear to strength. Imagine yourself as the olive in the press. It is not comfortable, but it is sacred. You are releasing what was always within you. You are offering something essential to the world. Your oil may appear as wisdom, as compassion, as resilience, as creativity, as the quiet power of presence. Whatever its form, it is the gift that emerges only because of the pressure. So instead of fearing the pressing, honor it. See it as a holy act, a refining of your essence. Let each trial draw forth your truest self. Let each challenge awaken deeper strength. And remember that what comes forth is not just for you. Just as olive oil lights, lamps, and nourishes others, so your oil becomes sustenance and illumination for those around you. In this way, your pressing becomes your offering. Your trial becomes your testimony. Your burden becomes your blessing. Gratitude is more than a polite response to blessings. It is a law of consciousness that amplifies strength. Just as roots draw hidden nourishment from the soil, gratitude draws hidden power from the source. When you live in thankfulness, your thoughts, words, and energy align with the flow of life itself. You are no longer grasping in scarcity or clinging to fear, you are resting in abundance. Think of the olive tree. It does not question whether the sun will rise or the rain will fall. It receives with quiet trust, stretching its branches upward, rooting itself deeper in the earth. Gratitude places you in that same posture, open, receptive, willing to receive what sustains you. Without gratitude, even blessings pass unnoticed, like rain wasted on parched soil. With gratitude, even small gifts become sources of great strength. Gratitude also acts as a refining fire in your inner life. When you practice it deliberately, you begin to see differently. Situations that once felt heavy reveal hidden lessons. People who challenge you become teachers. Failures transform into stepping stones. Gratitude does not erase difficulty, but it alters the lens through which you view it. And when perception shifts, energy shifts. Where others see defeat, you see opportunity. Where others dwell in resentment, you abide in peace. This is not sentimentality, it is metaphysical law. A mind focused on lack breeds more lack. A heart fixed on bitterness attracts more bitterness. But a spirit trained in gratitude tunes itself to abundance, and thus experiences more of it. The law is impartial. It simply magnifies the vibration you carry. Gratitude ensures that what is multiplied is life-giving, not draining. You can test this law in daily practice. Begin your morning not with what is missing, but with what is present. Name the simplest blessings: the breath in your lungs, the stability beneath your feet, the chance to begin again. Throughout the day, notice the unnoticed: the smile of a stranger, the strength of your body, the lessons wrapped in frustration. At night, gather these moments into a quiet offering of thanks. This discipline shifts the soil of your consciousness, making it rich and fertile. And from this soil, fruit grows more abundantly. Gratitude strengthens your capacity to endure storms, because you recognize that even the storm waters the ground. It sharpens your ability to see opportunities, because your eyes are trained to notice. It enlarges your heart, because you understand that life itself is a gift. The more you abide in gratitude, the more you discover strength rising from within you like sap in the tree. Gratitude is also contagious. Just as oil from olives can anoint and bless others, your thankfulness spreads to those around you. Your presence becomes lighter, your words more uplifting, your energy more welcoming. People feel nourished simply by being near you, because you radiate a spirit of abundance instead of complaint. Without saying a word, you remind them that strength is available, that life still offers goodness, that they too can root themselves in the source. When you find yourself tempted by discouragement, return to gratitude. When fear whispers of scarcity, answer with thanks for the provision already given. When anger threatens to poison your heart, recall the blessings that remain untouched. Gratitude is not denial, it is deeper recognition. It does not ignore pain, but affirms that pain does not have the final word. It centers you again in the flow of the divine, the endless supply that never fails. So, let gratitude be your law, as steady and reliable as the law of gravity. Let it anchor your days, inform your decisions, shape your words, and as you do, watch how your life transforms not by magic, but by the natural outworking of a consciousness aligned with Source. Like the olive tree that flourishes in rocky soil, you too will thrive where others falter, because you are nourished by the unseen abundance gratitude reveals. There comes a moment when ideas must take form in rhythm, when theory becomes practice that carries you through ordinary hours. Abiding is not a lofty vision reserved for retreat or ritual. It is a daily protocol woven into the fabric of your life. Just as the olive tree sustains itself by quietly repeating the same hidden actions, drawing water, reaching sunlight, deepening its roots, so you must cultivate practices that keep you rooted in the source without interruption. Consider the power of morning beginnings. The first thoughts you allow upon waking are like the first drops of dew on a leaf. They set the tone for the entire day. When you wake anxious, replaying fears or obligations, you weaken your root connection before you have even stepped out of bed. But if you begin by anchoring awareness through a word of thanks, a breath of stillness, or a silent reminder of unity, you establish alignment. It is like placing your foot firmly on solid ground before you walk. Through the day, interruptions are inevitable. Demands press, people frustrate, noise surrounds. The mind is tempted to scatter, chasing dozens of small currents that drain vitality. Your daily protocol is not about avoiding these interruptions but transforming them. Each pause in the flow becomes an invitation to recenter. Each irritation becomes a chance to root deeper instead of react. The law of abiding is simple. You do not need to escape the world. You need to stay connected within it. Small rituals help: a whispered affirmation before entering a meeting, a breath of silence between conversations, a moment of gratitude before responding to conflict. These acts do not take time from you. They return time to you because they prevent wasteful reactions. They are like pruning small branches to preserve strength for real growth. Even work itself becomes part of the protocol. When approached in the spirit of service, every task, however ordinary, becomes a form of abiding. Washing dishes, answering emails, walking down the street, all can be infused with awareness of the source. The difference is not the task but the consciousness behind it. A rooted life transforms common acts into channels of strength. Evenings are crucial. Just as the olive tree rests in the cool of night, you too must let your system recalibrate. Reviewing the day through the lens of gratitude, releasing what burdens you, and affirming unity with the divine closes the cycle. Sleep then becomes not an escape but a continuation of abiding. Your rest is deeper because you trust that the source sustains you even when you are not conscious of it. The danger of neglecting this protocol is subtle. Without deliberate rooting, you drift. Days blur, energy scatters, small frustrations accumulate until they feel like immovable walls. Life becomes reaction instead of creation. That is why consistency matters more than intensity. It is not about occasional dramatic efforts but steady practice, as natural as breathing. Remember, abiding is not effortful striving, it is relaxed alignment. Just as roots do not strain to find water, they simply reach downward. You too must cultivate habits that guide you gently back to source. Over time, these small disciplines create stability. No storm can uproot. And so, your daily protocol is not a burden but a lifeline. It shapes the way you wake, walk, work, and rest. It turns interruptions into opportunities, tasks into offerings, nights into renewal. With each repetition, your roots grow deeper, your branches stronger, your fruit more abundant. Abiding is not something you visit, it is the way you live. Unity is not a distant dream or a fragile ideal, it is the underlying reality of existence. Just as an olive tree may have many branches stretching in different directions, yet they all share the same life coursing from the root, so it is with humanity. Outward differences can be vast language, culture, opinion, belief, but beneath these variations flows one source, one animating spirit. To abide is to awaken to this fact, to recognize that what unites us is stronger than what divides us. When you forget this unity, confusion arises, like branches cut off from their root. Rivalry becomes natural, suspicion becomes normal, and fear of scarcity shapes your choices. You feel isolated, as though your survival depends on hoarding strength, but unity dissolves this illusion. In truth, you are not competing for limited supply. You are drawing from the same infinite source. Another's gain is not your loss. Another's growth does not diminish you, it affirms the life you share. This realization transforms relationships. Instead of seeing people as obstacles, you see them as fellow branches nourished by the same root. Their success becomes an extension of your own. Their struggles awaken compassion rather than judgment. Division loses its grip because you no longer perceive yourself as separate. In this light, forgiveness ceases to be a heroic act. It is simply the recognition of shared life. The olive tree teaches this wisdom silently. No branch claims ownership of the sap, no leaf boasts of producing its own green. Everything flows from the same source, distributed according to need, manifesting in different shapes, yet sustained by one life. To live in this awareness is to step into what Christ called oneness. I and the Father are one, not as a statement of exclusivity, but as a universal law available to all. And this unity is practical. It ends the exhausting struggle of trying to prove worth because worth is already inherent in the life you carry. It dissolves fear of abandonment because you cannot be severed from the source. It quiets envy because what nourishes another can nourish you. It strengthens collaboration because together you form a greater expression of the same root. Unity is not abstract philosophy. It is the very structure of reality, waiting to be recognized. When you practice abiding in this consciousness, daily conflicts lose their power to fracture you. You may disagree with others, but you do not need to despise them. You may feel pressure from circumstances, but you do not collapse into despair. The unity within gives you a calm center from which to act wisely. Instead of draining energy in endless competition, you conserve strength for creation, service, and growth. And as you live this truth, you become a witness to others. Your presence communicates peace without words. Your choices reflect abundance without boasting. Your relationships demonstrate love without strain. People sense the difference, because unity is not something you announce, it is something you embody. Just as the olive tree stands for centuries, sheltering life under its branches, so will your rooted unity create shelter for others. You will discover that strength is not merely individual endurance, but shared resilience multiplied across many lives, flowing from one eternal source. When the olive tree bears fruit, it is not merely the triumph of survival, it is the testimony of abiding. Fruit is never instant. It is the slow, patient result of hidden processes that unfold day after day. The same law governs your life. What appears outwardly as wisdom, peace, or strength is simply the natural harvest of a consciousness rooted in the divine source. You do not manufacture this strength. It ripens as surely as olives ripen under the sunday. Think of the oil pressed from those olives. It becomes nourishment for the body, light for the lamp, and healing for wounds. This is the true measure of abiding, not how strong you appear, but how much blessing flows through you to others. Your strength is proven by your fruit, the kindness you extend, the wisdom you embody, the peace you radiate. A tree does not eat its own fruit. It produces for the sake of others. In the same way, your abiding brings sustenance to those around you. Yet fruit-bearing also requires pruning, patience, and persistence. Sometimes branches must be cut back so that energy is not wasted. Sometimes seasons pass with little visible progress. Yet deep within, unseen growth prepares for abundance. Trust this rhythm. When you abide, you need not panic if results are delayed. The law is unfailing. What is rooted will bear fruit in its time. And that fruit is not only outward service, it is inner transformation. You become less reactive, more centered, less swayed by passing winds. Your mind sharpens, your heart softens, your spirit steadies. People may marvel at your composure, but you know it is not willpower, it is the life of the source flowing through you. You have learned to live not in depletion, but in overflow. As Emmet often emphasized, the Christ life within is practical. It is not an abstract mysticism, but a law of mind. When you align thought with the source, you draw on strength beyond circumstance. When you anchor your emotions in unity, you remain unshaken amid turmoil. When your actions grow from gratitude and love, they carry a power that endures. This is the harvest promised to those who abide, not a fragile supply, but unending strength. So let your life be like the olive tree, rooted, enduring, fruitful. Let storms come, let seasons shift, let years unfold. You are connected to a source that cannot be exhausted. Your roots are hidden in eternity, your branches stretch toward possibility, your fruit a blessing to the world. And in this abiding, you discover that true strength is never fleeting, for it does not come from you alone, it flows endlessly through you from the divine. As we close this journey, slow your pace and breathe into the awareness that strength is not something you must chase. It is already here, flowing into you like sap into the tree. Your only task is to remain rooted, to remember the source, to abide. Consider the image of the olive tree one last time. Its roots reach deep into unseen soil, drawing nourishment silently. Its trunk grows strong, not through struggle, but through steady alignment with the life around it. Its fruit appears not from anxious effort, but from the quiet law of growth. This is your life when you abide. You are no longer tossed by every change of weather. You are no longer drained by every demand. You live in rhythm with a strength that cannot be taken away. Carry this awareness into your days. In moments of stillness, remember your roots. In moments of conflict, return to unity. In moments of fear, practice gratitude. In moments of exhaustion, rest in the flow that sustains all life. These are not extraordinary acts. They are simple shifts of consciousness that reconnect you to the divine. And know this: abiding is not a burden, but a gift. It allows you to stop striving for strength and start living from strength. It allows you to stop fearing lack and start embodying abundance. It allows you to stop feeling separate and start living in unity. This is the law of the olive tree roots, the law of abiding in divine source. May this truth anchor you, steady you, and carry you forward into every season. You are not alone. You are rooted in the eternal.